About 160 million children aged between 5 to 17 around the world are engaged in child labour. According to the International Labour Organization, these children work in jobs that deprive them of their childhoods and interfere with their schooling.
The ILO says nearly half of them, 79 million children, work under hazardous conditions, such as carrying heavy loads on construction sites or digging in open-pit mines. According to the UN agency, about 70% of child laborers work in agriculture. Others work long hours in factories, domestic service or forced labor, such as child soldiers and children exploited in commercial sex trade. Child labor is concentrated in the world's poorest countries. It is also common in fragile contexts where there is insecurity or armed conflict. Sub-Saharan Africa has 86.6 million child laborers, more than anywhere else. Family poverty and poor schools are two major reasons children in low-income countries are in the labor force. However, child labor is not confined to low-income countries. About 93.4 million children, 58.4% of child laborers, live in middle-income countries, and 1.6 million child laborers live in high-income countries.
Well, for some analysis of International Workers' Day, we're now joined by David Dokenu, who's a senior worker specialist for the International Labour Organization. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program. What are your reflections on Workers' Day today?
Thank you very much, Peter. Usually, the Workers' Day is a day of reflection and commemoration for workers. In the first place, the history of Workers' Day signifies that it was on this day within the 17th century that workers fought for 8 hours per day working time. There are so many people now working 8 hours a day, but who do not have an idea in terms of the history and those who fought for workers to achieve this day. So during Workers' Day, for example, one, it's an opportunity to commemorate and also to see how far the labor movement has come when it comes to the issues of Workers' Day. And then secondly, to also reflect on the current development within the labor market and what they can do together with stakeholders to help address the challenges that workers are facing during current dispensation. So you see workers holding placards outlining issues which are of interest to them or things that are affecting them in the world of work.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the issues of the current day. What are workers facing? What are the challenges that they need to overcome in this era that we are, particularly post-COVID, if we can even say that we're even there yet?
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. One of the issues that workers are fighting for is the extension of social protection to all class of workers. Here we're talking about both formal sector workers as well as informal economy workers. We have seen that in Africa, social protection in many countries are limited to only formal sector workers, who are actually very, very few. Majority of the workers, not only in South Africa but across the continent of Africa, are located in the informal economy. And many of these workers have no protection whatsoever. They have no social security, they have no medical care, they have no any child care support. So that is one of the challenges. The other one is the issue of minimum wage. How to ensure that minimum wages are determined, and secondly, these minimum wages that are determined are applied in practice to all class of workers. Thirdly, workers also have challenges with implementation of agreements that they have reached with their employer, either be government or the private sector employers. Many a time they have sat down to agree through collective bargaining process that these are the terms and conditions of employment we want to govern and guide the workplace with. But sometimes, as time goes, we realize that due to some challenges from the employer perspective, they are unable to fulfill some of these challenges. Thereafter, another important challenge that current workers are facing currently is the issue of occupational health and safety. Many employers are not able to provide the workers with the protective equipment that they are supposed to be able to work with. and to ensure that these workers are protected from the hazards within the various working environments. Fourthly, I will touch on the issue of skill development. Workers are very much interested in issues of skill development, given the time that we are living in, where there are transformations through technological changes. Workers are interested in upgrading their skills in order to make them relevant to the labor market until they retire. And this has also become a challenge. So these are some, and of course, the emergence of COVID has worsened the situation of some of these issues that I've raised, because the emergence of COVID has also affected employers and governments. So this has also widened the type of challenges that workers are currently battling with within the country.
Sadly, on International Workers' Day, we're talking about children, and this isn't a conversation we should be having on International Workers' Day, but 160 million children between 5 and 17 are working.
Yes, it's indeed a great challenge, particularly to the continent of Africa, because within the last 6-7 years, the menace of child labor within the continent of Africa has worsened. And this is because workers in hazardous work that affect their health, their safety, and their morals has risen for with more than 6 million. So we have more than 6 million young children on the continent of Africa who are engaged in hazardous work, which is affecting the life of these children. It does not give them the opportunity to go to school, to develop their potential to become useful citizens for the country and for the continent. And it's indeed a very serious menace that we believe that the government would have, and the other stakeholders would need to come back to the table to see how best to address policy challenges to be able to help reduce, if not eliminate, issues of child labor in South Africa and the continent of Africa at large.
It might be quite simple, I guess, for us just to condemn this practice across the continent, because for many families, it's a question of life and death. That's how poor they are, that everybody in the house must work, including children. How do we balance these issues? Because there are desperate families out there that prefer their kids to be at school, but because of their circumstances, it becomes an issue where they battle, and the children, sadly, they put them out to work.
Yes, it is true that the economic situation is really impacting upon parents. In growing up, myself, I've been supporting my parents within the informal economy, but this did not deprive me from going to school to develop my skills and my potentials. So we are not saying that children cannot support their parents, but that should not be done at the risk of the current and future development of the child. So we believe that policymakers have a crucial role to play. We have seen that in many countries, the governments have done what we call developed a program we call school feeding programs. Some have developed programs to provide basic educational materials and uniforms to children, just to encourage children to be able to go to school. Some also created an enabling environment within the classroom to encourage children to have a love and a desire. There are other policies that also look at how do we empower the parents of these children economically. Because when the parents are empowered economically, I'm sure that they will be able to release these children to be able to go to school. So we need to look at studies that show us the real causes of the child labor menace in each country, because it may not be the same across board, and then devise policies to be able to address the specific challenges. In some countries, it's the issue of the school environment. They go to school, they don't even have chairs to sit on. They go to school, there are no books even to read. For others, it is not about books. They can't even have one meal a day to eat, and so they go to school in an empty stomach. So if that is the challenge, then providing school feeding program to some extent can help. The other alternative also is to look at teachers who teach these children. I mean, studies have shown that teachers who teach children, it is important to motivate them. But when you motivate them, the dedication and commitment to teaching children and creating the environment for them, for the children to feel comfortable and learn, is very, very high. So issues of morale of teachers who teach children and the school environment is equally important, that policymakers will need to focus on some of these areas to be able to help reduce the menace of child labor in the country and on the continent of Africa at large.
Are girl children discriminated even more because that they are girl children?
Yes, that is true because of our society, in many of our society, because parents do not have money to take their children to school. When they get the opportunity, they prefer taking the boy child to school. But it is important for parents also to understand and know that whatever the boy child can do, the girl child can equally also do, and sometimes even better. Because in many countries we have seen that girls are performing exceptionally better than boys. So we also need to sensitize and educate our communities, the societies, through the various religious and community organizations, for them to see the importance of giving equal opportunity to the girl child to also to be able to go to school. Because when they go to school and they study, the multiplier effect is really huge and amazing. So we are encouraging parents to take their girl child to school, and incentive through policy options to be given to parents to also send their girl child to school. And I'm sure that some NGOs are doing this, supporting these processes, supporting the girl child to go to school. Where they do well, they are giving scholarships and encouraged to learn mathematics, to study science, and many of them are doing very, very well. So we need to encourage and provide them with a lot more of support for them to be able to go to school.
I would imagine trafficking is another issue that makes children vulnerable to being caught up in child labor. This is an area that must be of concern for you.
Seriously, yes. Child trafficking is a serious issue, and sometimes it's not even, when we talk about trafficking, it's not even children. There are adults who are also trafficked, but child trafficking is really serious, because most of these children who are trafficked end up in becoming commercial sex workers. Some are also working in fishing community, in the boats, diving into the lakes, in the rivers, in the seas, mending nets under the water. And some of them even die because of doing all these activities. So yes, it's a serious issue that we need to give serious attention to, and we believe that policymakers must give serious attention to this. The ILO is doing a lot of work in this area to try to support member countries to be able to reduce, if not eliminate, the menace of child trafficking. Is becoming a huge problem, because many parents, as well as we indicated earlier, due to the economic challenges that they are going through, they easily give their children to people who appear to be philanthropists, who want to help their children, send them to school, support them, help them to acquire skills. And these people end up exploiting these children through commercial sex activities, using them to work in the quarries and in the fishing community, thereby jeopardizing the future of these children who are assets of the country. So it is important that we focus on this particular aspect of the menace of child labor as well.
Perhaps as we start to wrap up, one of the conversations we had this evening was around labour unions. And I just wonder what your thoughts are and your experience has been over time, because some are suggesting that unions are not keeping up to date with the times, and that maybe unions need to change their ways. I'm wondering if you agree with that, and also, do they help protect workers? Are non-unionized workers more vulnerable in the modern day?
No, thank you very much, Peter. Let me categorically state that studies have shown and confirmed that in almost all the countries of Africa, where we have union members covered by collective bargaining, they have had improved working conditions than workers who are not covered by collective bargaining. And that is a fact. So, taking a cue from that, we can conclude that, look, where unions are not able to extend coverage to cover a class of workers, there is high probability that employers are going to exploit these class of workers. The challenge that we have in that part of the world is the issue of the huge number of workers who are located in the informal economy. And the informal economy is so diverse and also complex and difficult to be able to organize. So the unions are making efforts, but the challenges in the informal economy is enormous and huge. So it is making it a little bit difficult for the unions to be able to make a lot of new rules. Nevertheless, we have seen COSATU, for example, making conscious efforts, organizing vulnerable workers, and the ILO has collaborated with them, has organized some capacity building program to support them in that direction. So the ILO is also focusing on the informal economy workers. We are working with many of them, trying to help them develop their skills, basic managerial skills, record-keeping skills, leadership skills, and also to be able to imbibe some of the elements that the informal sector workers have. But one major challenge that we see in the informal economy is the fact that many of the policies and the legislation that govern formal sector workers are not extended to cover the informal economy workers. And that also makes it difficult for the unions to be able to organize the workers in the informal economy. So while the unions are making effort, it also behoves the policy makers to consciously ensure that the labor laws of the country must extend to also cover the workers in the informal economy. That is one of the ways that we can ensure that the standard of living or the decent work agenda of the ILO is spread from both the formal sector workers to cover the informal economy workers, who are now in the majority in almost all the countries of Africa.
David Dorkenu, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program today and help us reflect on this very important day as a senior worker specialist for International Labour Organization, David Dorkenu.
Thank you, Peter, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Now, by 2020, about 160 million children worldwide are engaged in child labour. 1 in 10 children worldwide, where child labour across all age groups. Boys are more likely to work than girls. And 1 in 3 children in child labour are out of school. Worldwide, the ILO estimates that 22,000 child labourers are killed at work each year.